I'm Yaffa Epstein. I'm here from the Pardes Institute of Jewish Studies, one of the organizations that's involved tonight. Pardes is a non-denominational co-ed Jewish learning program whose goal is to open the door of classic Jewish text study as wide as possible to allow any Jew who wants to come in and learn. We have many, many different programs on the side here. There's information about all of our programs. We have a summer program, a year program, a semester program, an educators program, an informal educators program, an executive learning seminar. We have amazing podcasts. In fact, we are number 2. This is being live streamed and recorded, so I hope this is still true. But I believe we are still number 2 on the downloads of the iTunes Judaism section. So check us out. Lots of great, yes, very impressive. Okay, so really great stuff on there. So please feel free to check us out. There's materials here. There's materials when you walk in. It's a great person. It's a great program. Thank you. Yes, it is. How many Pardes alumni do we have in the audience? Raise your hands. Okay, those of you on live stream, you don't see this, but there's a whole room. Everyone's hands are raised. Oh, nice. Pardes wannabes. I like that. Great. I'm still a Pardes wannabe even after all these years. Okay, so my friends, we're here to talk about the topic of ugly men and beautiful rabbis. What is beauty in Judaism? And to think we're going to do that in an hour is a little bit ambitious. So we're going to start talking about it. But luckily, with the Global Day of Jewish Learning, we have 24 hours and then much longer, the whole year, really, to talk about this theme of beauty and ugliness. It's really wonderful to be able to talk on that topic. It's really wonderful to be here with Limud, an organization that we at Pardes feel very close to and we love working with. So it's going to be a really, really wonderful hour of learning. Okay, so my friends, actually what's going to be interesting, I think, when we talk about beauty and we talk about Judaism, most of the time we think about talking about women. It's just sort of the reality of when we talk about beauty, we think about women, we think about beautiful women. Our matriarchs are listed as beautiful. In fact, we read this morning about Rivka being very beautiful. So there seems to be this positive connection between physical beauty and some sort of moral beauty, moral character. And what's going to be sort of interesting for us is to look at the question from the point of view of the rabbis of the Talmud and trying to figure out exactly what they think about that topic. Now, what's going to be also, I think, quite fascinating is the question of beautiful rabbis specifically. Okay, are rabbis beautiful? Should rabbis be beautiful? What does it mean to have physical beauty when you are a learned person? And that's really going to be the beginning of our conversation. Okay, how do we feel about that? How's everyone feeling? Great. We're ready for that? We're ready to talk about it? Okay, so we'll start with some texts. Those of you online, just one page, double-sided. Okay, so you're getting one page. It's okay. It's just one page, double-sided. Okay. So they're coming around. So we'll just play them around. Those of you online, you should be able to download this or access it online. The rest of you, it's going around. Okay. We're actually going to do something that's like completely out of character for me. We're going to start not in Chavruta. Can you believe that? Don't worry, Chavruta's coming. Don't worry, don't be scared. It's on its way, okay? But not just yet. Because first we have to talk a little bit about the first text on our pages and really at sort of the historical background to some of the stories that we're going to be looking at today, okay? Everybody has a text? Everyone's looking at a piece of text right now? Yes. Yes? No. Back in the back, they still need more. Let's make sure we get them. Okay. So what's important to understand, my friends, is that, and the first story that don't look at it yet, I really did create like a terrible pedagogic moment. Terrible. I remember being recorded and live streams. Great to put that out there. Okay, great. But everyone just put your papers down for a minute. Okay. What's important to know is that in the rabbinic world, there is a backdrop of Greco-Roman culture, and in Greco-Roman culture, the body, physical beauty, the external has a huge amount of influence, okay? Is something that we place major emphasis on, okay? And that is an important thing to understand, and that really the rabbis are countercultural in saying, don't focus on the outside, rather look at the inside, right? Very famous from Pirkei Avot, ethics of our fathers, right? Don't look at the outside, rather the inside. Okay? So we're going to sort of look at that tension between the outside and the inside. It's going to be a big question for us. But even more so, it's not just like a regular question of outside and inside, but also part of understanding what's happening for the rabbis is they're living in a culture wherein the external is primary, right? And they feel that they, as outsiders to that culture, right? So the inside-outside is happening both on a physical level, but also on a cultural level. As outsiders to that culture of physicality, we are also we are trying to emphasize a different value, which is the internal. Okay, clear?
Yes.
Any questions so far? Okay, great. So the first piece that we're going to look at together, my friends, is from Tractate Ta'anit, just a sentence about what that is. Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Ta'anit. Right? Babylonian Talmud, I like to say, is a series of conversations around the Mishnah being the first written down code of oral law. Did you hear that little? Did you hear that? The first written down code of oral law. Right? There's a problem there. I hope we're noticing like that's on purpose, right? Right? Because really the Mishnah is the first time that we codified Torah Sheba'al Peh, this oral law, which is passed down from generation to generation, and this is the codification. Okay, so here we have a story that I think illustrates the point I was making earlier, but I also want to point out Tractate Ta'anit. We're going to see two stories in Tractate Ta'anit. Tractate Ta'anit is full of Agadah, full of rabbinic stories, and this one is specifically in the context of different kinds of liquids. Okay, that's what we're talking about, liquids. That's the backdrop of this story. And specifically right before this is a sentence about how certain liquids need to be kept in ugly containers. And just like Torah is found in the lowly, Torah is found in that which is ugly. That's the backdrop of this story. Okay, my friends? The literary backdrop of this story. So, everybody with me? Source number one. The daughter of the emperor said to Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, "How can such glorified wisdom be contained in such an ugly container?" Okay, that's enough. We just spent like an hour on that, let's just be honest. Okay, so first of all, we have the daughter of the emperor, right? Or the daughter of Caesar, really. Yoshua ben Hanania, who's a very important rabbi in the time period of the Mishnah, okay? And what does she say to him? You're ugly. That's absolutely right. You are ugly. Good.
And your Torah is
And your Torah is beautiful, or at least your wisdom, right? Your wisdom is beautiful. Good.
essentially your inside and outside don't match.
Good. Right? She's disturbed. It's not just that she's saying, you're ugly, but you're really smart. Good for you. She actually is asking a question, right? How can it be that this wisdom is contained in such an ugly container? Okay? Because for her, it doesn't compute. Exactly. It doesn't make sense. Right? How can this be? And which means, my friends, part of what she's saying is that something must be, which one? Which one do you think is off? Good, not clear, right? Which one of these things is off, right? Meaning your outside, it doesn't make any sense. Your outside should actually be beautiful. But who thinks it's the inside that she's questioning? Yeah.
The outside doesn't lie. It's like this ugly container. Your wisdom must be really false.
Good.
Otherwise, it doesn't make sense.
Good. I think part of what's going on here is that she is right. Is that she's saying that actually, if you are so ugly on the outside, I actually am suspect about your wisdom. How can such wisdom is contained? Meaning, what is your wisdom really there? Yes.
Our bodies are our vessels.
Yes.
Did I say more?
Maybe. Say more. Yes.
Well, where's Aramaic from? What language? What concrete country is Aramaic? It's the Babylonians.
Okay.
Why would they be arguing the same language with the Babylonians? Why do we say the Kaddish in the Aramaic when it represents the Babylonian language of our of our despised conquerors.
Right.
Why?
Okay, great. Really good question. It's a huge act. Tell me your name. Mike. Okay, so Mike, it's a really interesting question. And actually, I just want to strengthen what you're saying here, because this is supposed to be, right, actually taking place with Yeshua and the daughter of the Caesar, which actually is Eretz Yisrael, right? It actually is fascinating to notice that this whole conversation is happening in Aramaic, and probably much later recounting of an earlier story or fable that we have. The question of Aramaic in our liturgy is a huge question, right? Really worth talking about. I'm going to leave it on the side just for now, because it's beyond the scope, as my teacher, Rabbi Levi Cooper would say. It's beyond the scope of our conversation now, but I'm very happy to talk about it more. But there's an interesting phenomenon happening here. And I think it's very important what Mike just pointed out to us in terms of the language that the story is being told to us in. Okay, good. Yes. Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead and read.
No, okay, no, just kidding. We're going to come back to it. Yes. Just tell me your first name.
His name is Grant. I think she's saying, if you're so smart, how can you possibly, why are you so ugly? You can do something about it. If your wisdom is worth something, you could have corrected this problem.
Okay, good. So I wonder what we can do in the year 100. I'm not sure, right? We don't actually have plastic surgery, but it's a real. This is a time when I was supposed to insert a joke that makes sense for anyway. But I don't have one, so someone can help me out there. But I think it's a really interesting question. What could we have done? What could Rabbi Shimon have done actually? But okay, so she's. I see your hand. I'm gonna just pause for 1 second, because we're only actually up to line 1, and we're already running out of time, which is unbelievable. That's how the Talmud works. Okay, so let's just go step by step here. So, how could it be that such wisdom is contained in such an ugly container? We have those who think it doesn't make any sense, right? Really, it should be that he is beautiful, and therefore, perhaps what we're calling into question is his wisdom. Perhaps not. Perhaps she's just flabbergasted by the difference. Okay, right? Amar Allah, he says to her, "Well, your father puts his wine in ceramic kegs." The best comeback of all time. What is he saying there, guys?
Fine wine goes in ugly.
Fine wine goes in ugly containers. I.e., as we began, right? Don't look at, right, I'm a fine wine, excellent, and don't look at the outside. You're missing it. You're missing it. The outside is not the point. But then she says, she doesn't really get it. She says, in what then should it be stored? And he says, you who are so important should put your wine in kegs of gold and silver. She went and informed her father, and their wine was poured into kegs of gold and silver. It all went sour. I'm really curious. What, the royal palace doesn't have a sommelier anywhere? You could be like, no, I never have understood that part of the story. Really? Nobody saw this, it's a bad idea. Nobody had Kiddush Friday night and went, has anyone ever had that experience where the Kiddush cup is made out of silver? I know now we live in a world where it's all coated in plastic and everything is great. But once upon a time, you used to pour that grape juice into your Kiddush cup, and every Friday night you'd be like,
That's wine.
to counter. Oh, beautiful. It's new. Don't use metal cups. Use ceramic cups. We all know. Okay. So excellent, right? So and lo and behold, they do it and it all goes sour. Then the emperor comes along and says, where did you get that idea to put that wine into this metal, right? Who told you to do this? She said, they call for him and ask him, why did you tell her to do this? And he says, exactly as she said to me, I said to her. Or as I like to say it, as she said to me, I said to her. I think it's a little more attitude than the first word, right? There's a lot of attitude here, which I don't know if it's the smartest thing when you're a rabbi and this is the emperor, Caesar. Not the smartest move. But again, back to Mike's point, it's Aramaic, and so we're telling you a story. We're not necessarily telling you a factual history here of what happened. Okay, so tell me, my friends, help me understand what's going on here. What's Yeshua Hanani's point? What's the emperor's point? What's the emperor's daughter's point? How do you understand what's happening? Yes. Rachel.
There's something about, if you have a good-looking person holding good quality stuff, something is going to go bad.
Okay.
Like, you can't be really beautiful.
Yes, right? There is really a line here, or Yeshua ben Hananiah, Rachel's reading of Yeshua ben Hananiah as saying, actually keeping wine in flasks of silver and gold will corrupt it. Beauty on the outside is actually something that corrupts, that causes things to go bad, causes things to sour, right? She is saying to him, I look at your outsides and I see that they don't match your insides, and therefore, right, something is wrong here. And he's saying, actually, not only is something not wrong, but the only way that my Torah, that my wisdom will be preserved is that I am actually contained in an ugly container. Okay? Yeah, Wendy.
I also see something that like links it to the wealth, right? They're probably very few percent as well, but gold and silver.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I think that's a very important point. There's absolutely a class issue that is happening here, right? Fantastic. Very, very nice. Yeah, you feel. Go ahead.
No, that makes sense. You could have just said the whole thing about putting your wine kegs in gold. You started by saying you are so important. It's like an extra layer of commentary about how one's status actually changes things in it. So anybody can have wisdom, but a great Rabb's wisdom is even elevated even more so than it is regardless of what's happening. Her importance has somehow made that wine even more deserving of gold.
Right, good, right? You are so important, right? So good. So there's a class, right? Good. So there's a class issue happening here, and he's actually sort of appealing to her, and she's cute. Help me out, my friends. Yeah, thank you. Her, sometimes I was English words. Okay, so right, he's appealing to her vanity, to her desire for power, to her, to the. Right, he's appealing to that, and he's saying to her, right? You're so important. You really should elevate this wine, which we all know means he's saying you're misunderstanding your importance. You're misunderstanding the value, right, happening here. Yeah.
Would it be correct to think that Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah probably didn't spend time talking to the princess of Rome, and so this is a constructed story from a Jewish perspective?
You're the rabbi. You said it. You said it.
I mean, if it is a construction, then it's really interesting. What are they saying about Greek Roman values or what is Jewish values?
Yes.
And then you have this, there is the empire of the body and the empire of the mind, which is really disintegrated.
Yes. 100%, right? And yes, absolutely, that's happening here. 100% that's happening here. And it's not for nothing that it's a rabbi versus the daughter of the Caesar, right? Absolutely, absolutely happening. Good. You're fat. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
people have that hand up, but it just came out. I mean, I just wanted to say, it's also not coincidental that it is talking to the daughter,
Good.
who is
Good.
weak and feeble woman.
Right.
It doesn't even have to hardly someone to
Okay. But, okay. Say another sentence. Say another sentence.
Sorry, I just got weird. Like she's a woman who cares about appearances. She's not going to have a get to even grasp
Great.
anything.
Great. And I wonder if taking that line, I think it's interesting to see that, like when he speaks to the father, to the emperor, his line is, oh, actually, like there could be a way when she's saying, oh, we men know how silly her comment was, and I was just trying to teach her a lesson using all of your wine, Caesar, and all of the wine in the palace. Okay. The greatest part of this piece of Talmud, the greatest part comes now. Ready? And then the Talmud says, what? How can it be? Because remember, my friends, as Rachel said to us, Yeshua ben Hananiah's point was actually beauty corrupts. Not just there's a differentiation between my mind and my body, right? But actually, beauty corrupts. Okay? The Talmud then says, really? But what? You never seen a good-looking rabbi before? That's what the Talmud says. I didn't say that. The Talmud says it, right? The ha'ikashviri, the gemiret, right? There are those who are beautiful who learn Torah and teach us Torah, right? And the most famous one of those, my friends, most beautiful rabbi, that's source number 2 on your pages, right, is Rabbi Yochanan. Right, Rabbi Yochanan, this beautiful rabbi here. He talks about himself here, source number 2. Rabbi Yochanan said, I alone remain the beautiful people of Jerusalem, right? One who wishes to see something resembling the beauty of Rabbi Yochanan should bring a new shiny silver goblet from the smithy and fill it with red pomegranate seeds and place a diadem of red roses upon the lip of the goblet and position it between the sunlight and the shade. That luster is a semblance of Rabbi Yochanan's beauty. Okay? Each one of these things, by the way, is worthy of unpacking what the valence is. What are the poets' significance of pomegranates and roses and a new goblet and sun and shade? There's tons to say about this piece, which again, we're not going to because there's not enough time. But I think what's important here is the Talmud knows that in Jewish tradition, there are rabbis who are very beautiful. So this is a very interesting moment where the Talmud actually is challenging the bottom line of Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanani. Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanani's position is beauty corrupts us. The Talmud says we actually have very beautiful rabbis. And this is Rabbi Yochanan, guys. It's not like some Joe Schmo. Okay, this is Rabbi Yochanan, one of the most important rabbis of the Talmud, one of the leaders of the Jewish community post the Mishnah. It's a very significant person who is being told is very beautiful. Okay, we're being told is very beautiful, and he even says, "I am beautiful." He owns that. So the Talmud here is understanding of the fact that that this is happening. Okay, and then the Talmud continues back up to source number one, the last line of the Talmud. No, if they would have been ugly, they would have learned more. So who does the Talmud hold like? Rabbi Yochanan, who says he's beautiful. Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanani, who was ugly and says actually ugliness is beauty, is virtue, is actually important. My Torah is, okay, woo, lot going on here. Tons going on here. Let's go. Tell me what you guys think. Yes.
Okay, I'm saying, so I see Madison Avenue all over this. And the whole, what can we sell you? And especially because within the past 2 years, a lot of people were sold a very pretty package that is not very pretty on the outside. Now that we're seeing what's on the inside. So there's that. I also see, and this is my limud pack, my limud kipah people. I see limudedness because is Elliot still here? Is the representative from the limud UK, and he often refers to limud as a hierarchy. And like, look at the beauty that comes from all the people who just come forward and put it together. It's not packaged and it has been paying a lot of consultants to do it. So I think both the sales job of Madison Avenue trying to get through and we see through that.
Beautiful, right? Good. So we can see through that. Excellent point. Effect. Yes. Just tell me your name.
Alan said.
Alan.
We talk about learning for learning's sake. In other words, once you add on something else, beauty, now you have two items. Not only you're learning, but now you're paying attention to something else also. So learning for learning's sake, which be the Torah. And once you add on, well, you have to be pretty, you have to do this, you have to dress. Now, a lot of times in Shivas, it's only the wealthier boys got to go, and you hear about the rabbi or young men standing outside, they just act something. So that was also, so you have two things going on here. What is the beauty? Is it just the Torah for the Torah's sake, or is it also who's containing the Torah?
Beautiful. The Torah itself, what I hear you saying, Alex, the Torah itself is the kli, is the container, right? Beautiful. Very nice. Yes.
I do.
Please tell us your name.
Greg.
Greg.
As you mentioned, you're not between the beautiful and the Greek world, but just between the ascetic world, where the monks and all the Christians who went away and flagelled themselves, or Socrates earlier was supposed to be the ugliest guy in Athens. And it's more, you want to be the popular kids, the American version, you want to be the popular kids or the nerdy kids.
Beautiful. Right.
What's more important than that?
Right. And we all know the nerdy kids, right, get to go, are more successful and are smarter and right? Which, by the way, is very interesting. Like, there's a real moment. I think this is interesting. To me, this is interesting. There's a real moment of lookism. Is that a word?
No, it is.
Right? There's a real moment of bias here, but we're hearing a Talmudic bias towards those who are less attractive, at least in their own understanding, and that I think is very interesting, right? And it's a real phenomenon in the world that we live in, right? That people are discriminated against when they are too attractive, right? There's an assumption that you're not smart, you're not good, right? So while on the one hand there's been a lot of studies to show that people who are more attractive have more opportunity. There's also been studies to show people who are attractive, right, conventionally attractive, are often looked over as not smart enough, not the nerdy kids, not going to be as successful, not going to work as hard. So it's a very fascinating phenomenon, and I just want to point out, I really think it's important what Greg is saying to us. Of course, as Adam said to us before, there is a clear Greco-Roman versus rabbi phenomenon happening here, right? Outside versus inside. But also what we hear, and this is why the Talmud is so amazing, is that there's also an internal Jewish conversation, right? Which is, I don't know, what do I think about attractive rabbis? What do I think about that charismatic, attractive rabbis? It's an interesting, very important question. Yeah, there we go.
I mean, for obvious to say that it's subjectivity. Talking about beauty as an objective thing.
Good. Good, so important.
So it's almost ridiculous.
Right.
It's one thing to understand things and adorn the job.
Good.
But I think that when someone speaks with his connect with you and inspire you,
right,
and you like really ugly and like really charismatic and brilliant and loving, and that person can be very beautiful.
Beautiful.
All of a sudden they're discomforted. It's very attractive.
Great, absolutely, right? I think that's a huge question in all of these conversations. What is beauty in an objective sense? Or what is beauty in a subjective, right? That there is absolutely a subjective nature always, right?
Downplaying our ability
Yes, absolutely happening in effect. Okay. Check.
These two things may be related, but I just want to point out that in the first Gemara, the standard at the top refers to Chokhmah, wisdom, and at the end it talks about learning.
Right.
It seems to be like those last two lines could just be an add-on.
Yes.
As a way of essentially avoiding the value judgment, because if you are more ugly, then you will learn more in life by having encountered more and have more struggles.
Yes.
It's not a value judgment per se.
Yeah.
And then in the second one, the Jewish value also connects back to the ark, the ark, which has gold on the outside and gold on the inside, so-called Kabbalah. So there is a Jewish value in beauty and learning.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's the second one. You mean the Rabbi Yochanan story? Okay. I just want to strengthen what you're saying. I think absolutely the last two lines are an add-on. The story ends with the Rabbi Yochanan thing. Actually, to me, I said to her, right? But then the Gemara asks on that story, absolutely, what? Rabbi Shimon Hananya, as if he's there. But right, how can you say this? Don't we have in our tradition rabbis who are beautiful, who are very learned? And the Gemara says, yeah. But actually, what you should learn from the story is that they would have learned more. But I think it's interesting, Shep, because as you were speaking, I was thinking, right, learning is not the same thing as something innate, sort of innate wisdom, perhaps, right? Maybe that's about meritocracy, and that there's something about, it would have been ugly, they would have had to overcome more challenges, etc. But I still think it's worth asking that question. Is that true? Right? But good, you're fat. Excellent, yes. Josh.
It strikes me that following up on what you said, that there's a fetishizing here that is interesting to think about learning. That the more you know, the more you value.
Yeah.
Number one, and that doesn't always translate into wisdom or good behavior,
Great.
which is probably the virtue that's hanging in the background. And the continuation of the Rabbi Yochanan story,
Yes.
the relationship between them goes very bad.
Yeah. Yes.
And I can't help but think, like, here's the most beautiful man.
Good.
Maybe he would have learn more if he wasn't so self-conscious.
Right, great.
Maybe he wouldn't
Great.
express it.
Great, really, really excellent. Just on one quick foot, the rest of source number 2, that I cut out on purpose because I was trying to avoid this story. Yeah, you see that? You can do that. You can just cut it off before it's not fair. Right. So we're looking at very important questions there. Really, really great. Maybe next year we'll talk about more about that story because it's a story that's worth learning in and of itself. But a very important point about how maybe this is an example actually where beauty did corrupt. Maybe this is a great example of that. Okay. Phenomenal. Very, very nice point. My friends, we have to. I'm so sorry. I know there are more people who want to speak. Yes, been waiting for a long time.
What I want to say, I think the handsome rabbi should study more because he wants to present himself not just like a beautiful rabbi, also a learning rabbi.
Right.
So he has to overcome it as well.
Mm.
The ugly rabbi for sure has to study. So they both have to study as much as they can.
Great. What's your name?
Ayala.
Okay, great point, Ayala. Right? Everyone needs to learn, right? I think it goes back to the point of the importance of learning. Does learning lead to the action? Huge question also. Okay, great, phenomenal. My friends, we have to pause here because we have to do a little chavruta. Because it's a mitzvah. We have to do chavruta. You know? It's one of the 6:13 now. You never got that memo? It is. Okay, so we're going to do a little chavruta action. What is chavruta, my friends? Paired learning. Why do we learn in chavruta? Why? So we can argue. So we can argue. Everyone, wait, stay with me for one more second before I do. You're already in chavruta. I love it. Great. But we learn in chavruta because, first of all, it's important for you to have a chance to get to the text yourself. These are your texts. I have a lot to say, but I'm just one person, right? You guys have a lot to say. Much more interesting, I'm sure. So you're going to learn. And also, there's an idea of learning with another person. We sharpen each other, we push each other. And also very important to understand, no text, very important for this particular class. Every text can be read in more than one way. We're going to look at source number 3 in chavruta. One person is going to read out loud. There are questions at the bottom. This text is complicated, ambiguous. I want to suggest it's purposefully ambiguous. It is unclear on purpose. So you're really going to need your chavruta partner. Try to play out each way of reading it. We're going to chavrut for 8 minutes. Okay, fine, 9 minutes. Okay, we're going to chavrut for 9 minutes. Those of you who are watching, you should call a friend. What are the things you do? Call a friend, call a lifeline, right? Exactly. Use your gal hatzalah, what is your life? And we'll come back together in 9 minutes, folks. Okay, turn to the person next to you. Let's do it. I don't know if it was. Hi, friends. I'm going to call us back together. Okay. I know. Who wants to stop Chavruta? Who wants to stop? I don't want to make you stop either. So what I like to say now is that we're not ending Chavruta. We're just going to be a giant Chavruta, what I like to call an infituta, an infinite number of Chavruta partners, okay? Including those of you online. I don't even know how many of you there are. You're part of our Chavruta. Okay, so, okay, my friends. So here we go. Tani Rabba, our rabbis taught a person to be flexible like a reed, not hard like a cedar. It once happened that Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, came from his rabbi's house and he knocked on the door, riding on a donkey, traveling by the river. He was extremely happy, very taken with himself after having learned so much Torah. Okay? And this is a problem. I did the translation here, so I want to just cut to it. Like, it's my problem. Right? The Hebrew here is actually the Haita Da'ato Gasa Alav. He thought about himself, Gasa. Gas means big. He thought bigly of himself. Literally, that is what this means. I couldn't even make that up. Okay, so that's really, no, seriously, that's what that means. He thought about himself greatly. I am great. I am amazing. I'm the greatest rabbi ever. I just spent all these years learning Torah and in my rabbi's house, and I'm the greatest. Okay? He came upon, that's the guy we're meeting. He came upon a very ugly man. My friends, I'm very hopeful that we're going to have some objections here. I'm going to read it one way, and I hope the room is going to go, no, that's not who's speaking, right? Already you disagree with me. Yes? Please. This is where the ambiguity starts, and your name is Lori says to us, right, what's the problem already? Who's he who says? Who came upon whom? Good. Keep going. And who's the rabbi? Great. Okay, good. So now, good. It's so phenomenal. It's so confusing right off the bat, my friends. We have no idea what the heck is happening in this story. Good. That's on purpose. I want to claim that's on purpose, okay? So he came upon a very ugly man. He said to him, Shalom Rabbi. This is the part in this class wherein I ask someone to act as the rabbi and someone to act as the ugly man. Who would like to act as the rabbi? Please raise your hand. Be brave. Okay, good. And what's your name? Joel. Joel is the rabbi. And who is the ugly man? Yes, Rachel. Okay, good. Rachel, you know something that's a secret, so don't give it away until okay, good. Okay, so Joel, you're right. He came upon a very ugly man. He said to him, that's never happened before. Usually both people speak at the same time, and no one's spoken. Okay, it's an interesting crowd. Okay, good. So he came upon a very ugly man. He said to him, what? Say again?
I assume in reading the story that it was the ugly man who said Shalom Rabba.
Okay.
But it could be the other way. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Yes, good. So we're on the board, but imagine. Okay. So we have already off the bat two possible reads. Who opens the story? Shalom Rabbi. Joel says that's got to be the ugly man. Why, Joel? Why is it the ugly man who opens? Because
The other guy's a rabbi.
it's a rabbi, right? Correct. So he comes across a very ugly man. The ugly man says, okay, we're calling this read one. Read one, okay? He comes upon a very ugly, no, good. People who are vehemently disagreeing, shaking their heads, good. I promise you will have your day, I promise you, okay? So, good, you should be disturbed by this. But when we read one, we're in Joel's read. We're calling this Joel's read, okay? And he's the rabbi, so he gets to have a read. Okay, so, just kidding. But everyone gets to have a read. We're good, our days, everyone gets to have a read. Okay, so, don't misunderstand me. Okay, so, right, Joel says here, right? He came upon a very ugly man. He said to him, Shalom Rabbi. Wait, hold on. He did not return his greeting. He said,
You are empty. How ugly that man is. All the people in the town, ugly like you.
okay, does everyone think that's right, that Joel speaks next?
No. If you read that the ugly man said hello rabbi, the rabbi doesn't respond, and therefore the ugly man has to say to the rabbi, you're empty.
Good. Ready, guys? We're at one. I want us to be clear here. We're in read one. Read one, A. and read 1B. Okay? Read 1A is, ugly man says, hi, Rabbi. Rabbi doesn't respond. Rather, Rabbi says, you're empty or ugly. Good?
Yes.
If we read it that way, that's 1A. Yes, my friends? If we're in read 1A, what is the emptiness and ugliness that the man that the rabbi, is remarking on? Physical excellent. Physical ugliness. Okay? I'm not going to even respond to your greeting. You're empty or ugly. Okay? And then the ugly man responds, really? Go tell God. Right? Because as we know, God does not make things that are ugly. Okay? You think I'm ugly? You misunderstand. Mr. Big Rabbi with all your Torah, that's great. You misunderstand. Go talk to God about how ugly I am. Okay? In that scenario, 1A, we're talking about physical ugliness. And the rabbi's behavior here is, right? And the emptiness is extremely important, by the way, right? Because what does he think about himself? He is full, in effect. He's full of Torah, and that fullness, right, allows him to treat someone who looks different than him, who he encounters as the other, as empty, the ugliness. Back to, remember we were talking about Greg's point. This is not just Greco-Roman culture versus Jewish culture, but you're watching actually internal Jewish conversation of, if I look at your outside and it's ugly, it must mean you are empty. Okay, so that's happening here as well. Okay, great. Okay, effect, good. That's 1A. Yes, everybody? Beautiful. Now, right? That was like scene 1. Oh my God. See, that would be even better with that purpose. Okay, great. Okay. All right, friends, good. So 1A. 1B. He came by a very good man. He said to him,
Shalom, Rabbi.
he does not return his greeting.
You are empty. How ugly that man is. Are all the people in your town ugly like you?
Good. Now, in that read, what is the ugly man reacting to? The rudeness of being ignored. Okay? And there's a very interesting moment that happens here because perhaps, right, the ugly man is saying to the rabbi, hi, Rabbi, I am being magnanimous. I'm welcoming you to my town, and you don't respond to me? You're empty. You think you're so full of Torah, you're empty, you're ugly. The ugliness there is in his rudeness and how he's treating him. Except what, my friends? What if the rabbi didn't hear? We don't know why he doesn't return his greeting. Also, maybe the rabbi's on a donkey. The ugly man's on the ground, right? Right? That doesn't sound good. What do I need to say? Not elevated. I don't know. And right? And maybe he really doesn't hear him. And then it's an interesting question about how, when we are different, right? How we project that onto other people. Right? I think there's a very interesting moment there where he has internalized his own ugliness to a degree that when he sees someone doesn't answer his greeting, which we don't know why, oh, you must think I'm ugly, therefore you're empty, you're ugly. But there's a defensiveness here that I think is very interesting, right? Just to notice that happens, okay? Okay, yes.
There's another.
What's your name, sir?
Under 1B, and that is that the townsman only says, you are empty. And then you have to put in quotation marks at the beginning of how ugly that man is. All people in your town ugly like you.
Yeah.
Quote unquote. So he is saying, I know your thoughts. You ignored me the way people have ignored me my whole life because I'm ugly.
Beautiful. So is that being said? How ugly that man is, all people count, or he's saying to him, I know what you're thinking, empty one. You must be thinking this.
That's why.
Because it's in the third person.
The only thing he says to him is you're empty. But
Right.
then there's quotes.
I love that. What's your name, sir?
Jerry.
Jerry, that is beautiful. It's a beautiful read of this text. Really beautiful. And I've never heard it before, thought about that before. I think it's amazing. I've heard this text many, many times. There's a brilliant read, right? You're empty. And then he says, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this, right? Was he thinking that? Was the rabbi thinking that?
He's holding himself to think anything.
That's right.
Okay, so maybe he really was just not even noticing this man. He's not worthy of speaking to. So we're reading him that way. But maybe not. Maybe he really didn't hear. Okay, so I think it's a very interesting question of how when we feel marginalized, what we project onto others, I think is worth thinking about here. Okay, effect, excellent point there, love it. Okay, good. That's all 1A, and we're only in the first sentence of the story, as always, right? Okay, what's the other? We're going to go right now to read 2, okay? We're going to go now to the other side, okay? Everybody with me? So, he came upon a very ugly man. He said to him, Joel. He came upon a very ugly man. He said to him,
Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom, Rabbi, right? He did not return his greeting. He said,
You are empty.
Oh.
Right, that's what the 2A.
2A. You're empty?
How ugly that man is. Are all the people of your town ugly like you?
Okay, does everyone read it that way? It's a hard read because of a lot of the other people in town. It's a little bit of a harder read. But still, we keep all reads alive. All reads can be read, okay? Especially in this text, which is purposefully problematic, right? Purposefully confusing. Okay, good. So maybe 2A is, Shalom, Rabbi. The ugly man doesn't respond. Maybe rather you're empty or ugly. You think you're so important. Now, why would he react that way? You're empty or ugly? Why? If we're in 2A, why would he react that way? What's he feeling? You look full of yourself. Why is he being defensive?
Because he was ignored or he was insulted.
No, he's the one who ignored in this reading. 2A, he's ignored.
I got lost.
We got lost. Okay, go ahead. Let's go back to 2A. Sorry. Okay, ready? 2A is this. Shalom, Rabbi. Ugly man says nothing and rather says you're empty or ugly. So why does he react that way? Good. Good. Get that. Oh, please. You know I'm not a rabbi. Okay? What are you doing then when you say, hi, Rabbi? What are you doing? Mocking, being condescending, being patronizing, because you're a rabbi. Either you think everyone has to be a rabbi, or because you know I'm different, you know I'm an ugly man, you know I'm not like you, and you're actually very patronizing. When I once taught this, I always quote her because I think it was a brilliant statement. Malia was in the audience, and Malia says, it's very real, right? That sometimes, oh, sorry, no, I'm in 2A. No, wrong. Sorry, Maya, we're coming back to you. That's 2B. Okay, but there's a moment here, I think, wherein the ugly man is defensive because of the patronizing nature, right? Don't think you can make me an equal just because you think I'm different. Like, it's too quick how you're trying to make me a rabbi too. Joel?
But it's also possible that the ugly man is saying to the rabbi, you are empty. You've learned all this Torah, and you see people like this, so your Torah is worthless.
Yes, absolutely. But when is he saying that? What did the rabbi do?
So the rabbi says in this mocking way to the ugly man,
Good.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Good.
Right? He doesn't respond. And instead, he attacks the rabbi.
Good.
Because he said, you think you're a terrific rabbi, and Torah, you're nothing.
You're empty, you're ugly, right? You give yourself a little terrier. So that's a little bit like 1A, right? You won't respond to my greeting, you think you're so important, you're not. What matters is how you treat people. That's what matters, right? Okay, good. Now we're in 2B, guys. Ready? 2B is, he came upon a very ugly man. He said to him, Shalom, Rabbi. He did not return his greeting. And then he says, who's the he here? The rabbi says you're empty. How do that? Right? Because then what's happening is, I, the rabbi, deign to call you a rabbi like me. I deign to be sorry. So I will try to elevate you to my status, and you don't return my greeting, you're empty or ugly. This is what Maya says. Sorry. This is what Maya says brilliantly. Sometimes we overcompensate, and when the other person, and we know they're different, we know they're not like us, and so we're trying to overcompensate. And when the other person doesn't respond the way we wanted them to, suddenly we're furious, right? Like, I deign to speak to you, and you can't return my greeting, right? That's 2B, okay? All right, how are we doing? Does anybody feel like their read has not come up yet? Yes.
Couldn't have just been surprised by how ugly the man was, not having anything to do with the interaction, but suddenly you saw the man's face and said, oh, you're pretty ugly. Did you live your town so
Correct. It feels so innocent, but isn't that like terrible? Awful. Yes. You said it so nicely. It's like, oh my gosh, you're just so ugly. Right? That's kind of terrible. Those are the things you keep inside. Those are inside thoughts, right? But in that, where does that fit in? 1A or B or 2A or B? If it was first, like, who says Shalom Rabbi that way? How are you reading that? And also tell me your first one. Neely, how are you reading? Who says Shalom Rabbi in your read?
Ugly.
The other way says Shalom Rabbi, and the rabbi is like, oh my God, whoa.
Yeah, but first he almost ignores him, so he doesn't even respond, and then he kind of like turns over and he's like, whoa.
Right.
I know I didn't say anything to you, but you, man, you're ugly.
You're ugly, right? How ugly that man is. It's also interesting, by the way, because they talk about him in third person. I think it's also very important there, right? How ugly that man is, are all the people in the town ugly like you? Meaning, oh my God, this is where I've come to, something like this ugly. So it's a very fascinating point here, right? That people who are different than us, how we other them. Okay. Okay. There is one. I'm so sorry, guys. Now I'm over time by like 4.5 minutes, and I'm just gonna go now. Okay. But so thank you so much. You are amazing. But I'm just gonna offer a few thoughts. And this came up, and I want to just say this is being recorded for posterity's sake. This is not my idea. It's not my idea, but it's a beautiful piece of Torah that I heard from my teacher, Rabbi Epstein, and she says, and I think is a brilliant, brilliant perspective. She says here, there's another way to read this whole story, which is, he came upon a very ugly man. Now remember, my friends, where is he walking? By the river. Okay? He came upon a very ugly man, and he says, that's right, Shalom, Rabbi. And guess what, my friends? The rabbi doesn't respond because the rabbi is his reflection. His reflection. He comes upon a very ugly man. Shalom, Rabbi. He doesn't respond to his greeting. Okay? And then he says, you're empty, you're ugly. Now, it's a bit of a problematic read, not going to lie to you, because you keep going and it's so hard. There's no one else on the donkey who's behind and Rabbi. Although I will say this, and I taught this once, that Ariella McDowell suggests that actually you could keep going, and it's a little bit, and I'm sorry if no one's seen this movie, but I'm going to ruin it for you now. It's a little Fight Club-esque, right? This is the Talmudic version of Fight Club. It really is, right? And it's really, you don't know what I'm talking about, just literally. Okay. No? We moved out in the dark. We moved in the dark. You didn't know, guys, it's going to be like a silent disco now. Okay, so. Or you could just push the light on. It's like waving my arms in the air. Just walk over there and do it. All right. Things you learn. Okay, so it was a very dramatic moment. It's true. And then he sees himself in the river. And right, and he's right. He says, "You're empty. How ugly that man is." Right, and there's, I think, a very beautiful message here about, right, what happens when we're trying to feel full, but we sometimes see ourselves and we see ourselves as empty. Right, and the beauty and ugliness here are very, very, talk about subjective. Right, and there's a very subjective situation. There's an image I'm trying to project out into the world, but when I confront myself, suddenly all my fears and doubts are there. Right, so I think if we read it that way, it's very, very powerful. So just to remind ourselves, I know we have to end, but just to remind ourselves of our various. Part of what's going on in this text is I'm really struggling with what ugliness means. Is ugliness a physical character trait? Is ugliness a personality trait? Is ugliness about how I treat people? Is ugliness about my own self-doubt? Right? And there's a message here of the ugliness is the doubt I feel about myself. Actually, part of what the story is trying to ask me to do is to overcome that. Right? Overcome those moments. Now, and this is with this last line, we're going to end here. I think it's not for nothing, my friends, that the story opens and closes with a person should be flexible like a reed and not hard like a seagull. Right? Right? That actually this message, and part of why I do this whole thing where I have everyone read and we read all the different reads, and why I would like to suggest that the text is actually purposefully ambiguous is because written into this text is this flexibility. Written into this text is the ability to say, there is no such thing as beautiness. There really isn't anything as beauty. There is no such thing as beauty, objective beauty. And there is no such thing as objective ugliness, right? But actually those things are subjective realities, and part of us is beautiful and part of us is ugly. We are the ugly man and we are the rabbi. But you know what else is amazing, my friends, is at the end of this piece says to us, when you realize that Shimon came in, comes to Josh, and he teaches a person should always be bending like a reed and not rigid like a cedar. Wait, look what happens, guys. Therefore, has the reed merited to be used for the quills with which we write the Torah scroll, tefillin was useful. What I think is important that the story is trying to teach me is there's no objective standard of beauty, there's no objective standard of ugliness. Beauty and ugliness are a part of ourselves, but also written into the Torah. The Torah itself has the capacity to hold all of that. All of the needs, all of the ambiguity, all of that flexibility, the parts of ourselves that are imperfect. All of that flexibility is actually written into our holiest of texts and is a part of us and our tradition. And with that, I'm going to end. Thank you guys so much. Great learning with you. Thank you.